I'm Mike Abbott, partner at BDO. I'm going to answer some Q&A today on defense spending. What's driving new companies to enter the defense supply chain today? In Canada, there's really two main drivers for why companies will enter the supply chain. Number one is our commitment to achieve 5% of GDP for our NATO commitments. That's number one. Number two, there's a large push for Buy Canadian, and it's an opportunity to increase and expand the defense sector and all of the industries that support the defense sector in Canada. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for businesses that want to compete in the defense space? This is a tough question to answer because the Department of National Defense tracks over 150 defense capabilities that they seek to acquire through domestic or international partners. So the biggest opportunities that I believe will exist for Canadian companies is the entry into the supply chain. Traditionally, Canada has bought from global partners and a limited number of suppliers here in Canada. Over the next 10 years, to meet those defense spending commitments, the opportunities will be right across the entire supply chain. Why does being a better operator matter so much in defense compared to other industries? Today, the defense sector is incredibly competitive. It's very regulated through procurement, and as a result, margins tend to be very substantial. There are multiple tiers of vendors that exist in the supply chain. You have tier one vendors that own the contracts with the government. In many cases, they will engage tier 2, 3, and 4. And what happens is margins come out. So if I hire a second tier firm to help me satisfy whatever I'm delivering to the government, there's a portion of that profit that does not flow its way down. So you have to be very, very good at operating. You have to be able to drive margins that will make you more competitive to win the work. So it's incredibly important in this space because it's hard to get in. It's a very limited number of organizations that have entered this sector in Canada, and so you have to be very good at operating. What are some of the most common regulatory or compliance issues companies underestimate when entering defense? This is a tough one. The main regulatory compliance considerations that any organization has to think about all flows from procurement. You have to comply with what's set out in the contract. You have to comply with lobby rules. You have to now comply with new cybersecurity regulatory requirements of entering the supply chain. The Department of National Defense will be pushing that to all of their suppliers. You have to worry about your corporate security program. And then finally, the controlled goods program. Not every organization needs it, but this is one that can often be overlooked. And so while it's not a huge regulatory burden, it's one that organizations will overlook. Why? Because they're focused on what they do. If they create a bolt that's going to go into a submarine, they want to be very good at that bolt and often don't think about what are some of the other regulatory hurdles that they have to achieve and meet. So it can often be overlooked. What is the first thing you'd tell a business leader who's curious about entering the defense space? I think a lot of people would like to enter the defense space, but the number one thing to start with is understand the defense capabilities. What does the Department of National Defense actually need, and can you supply it? You have to have a theory about what problem you can solve for the defense sector. So the starting point, you have to have a theory. You have to know where you could play, and that's where it's quite often good to engage third parties like BDO to help you through that strategy. Think about where you could play in that space. That's where I would start. If you cannot supply something that they need, then you won't be in this sector. Defense, niche market or broad opportunity? It's both. Right now, it's hard to get a ticket into that club. That being said, $70 billion will be entering the Canadian marketplace. It will include our NATO partners as well. It won't just all be Canadian, but it's going to create a fairly broad opportunity over the next 10 years. But it's niche in that you have to fit into the defense capabilities. This is not, they're not buying everything across the country. There's a very set number of products that they will be buying. Biggest risk companies overlook: their value proposition and how they can be a trusted supplier to the Department of National Defense. It goes back to starting with a theory of what product and what problem you can solve, and it has to be there, but then underestimating what the competitive landscape is going to look like, and that you may not be the primary contract holder. You may be a tier 2, tier 3, or tier 4. So understanding how to get into that procurement environment is probably the biggest risk. Early sign a company isn't defense ready yet. I think there's two. One would be, are you controlled goods cleared? That is a critical element in the supply chain for defense. And if you're not on that list, and the Government of Canada publishes that list, that's an indicator that you might not be ready. Now, that's not the only indicator. If you haven't built your specific theory of how to enter the defense sector, you haven't tested it with anyone, that means you're probably not ready. Thank you for listening. I cannot wait to do more together on this topic.